Hey everyone, and welcome to your personalized deep dive.
Today, we're diving into the career of Evsey Neymotin.
And you know he's a physicist.
But his career path,
It's not a straight line at all.
it really isn't.
Yeah, it zigs and zags in some pretty surprising ways.
You sent over what's basically like his mini biography.
It's packed with, credentials and publications.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, buckle up, because
Yeah.
it's going to be quite a ride.
I think what's really fascinating is how he hops between not only like continents, but also disciplines.
Right.
We're going to see how this guy goes from theoretical physics to
Yeah.
places you wouldn't expect.
Okay, so let's start with the basics.
We see that Neymotin got his PhD and his master's in physics.
Both from Kazakh State University.
Okay.
And he was really into that theoretical and mathematical physics life.
Specifically zeroing in on something called...
Neutron transport theory.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Now, I'll be honest, that sounds a bit intimidating to me.
Can you break that down for us?
So imagine you're trying to track a tiny, speeding neutron
Okay.
as it zips through different materials.
That's essentially what neutron transport theory is.
Okay.
It's like creating a roadmap for these tiny particles.
And it turns out this knowledge is crucial for things like...
Designing safe and efficient nuclear reactors.
Or even understanding what's going on in the heart of stars.
Wow. Okay, so from day one, this guy was tackling some pretty...
Complex concepts.
with huge real-world implications.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And get this. He was also teaching early on.
At Kazakh State University and the Kazakh Medical Institute.
Wow.
Talk about a passion for knowledge sharing.
It seems like he just, wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to
Yeah.
understand this stuff.
Exactly. He wasn't content just knowing things himself.
He wanted to spread the knowledge around.
Yeah.
And then his time at the Kazakh Center of Standards and Metrology.
Statistically evaluating standard samples.
That showcases some serious analytical skills.
Right.
Like imagine him meticulously poring over data.
Finding those hidden patterns.
Yeah.
Then comes a major plot twist. Neymotin emigrates to the U.S. in late 1978.
Big change.
Huge life change, right?
Sure.
And what's really interesting is that he pivots
From this academic life right into the nuclear industry.
at American Electric Power.
Wow.
That's not exactly a typical career move.
Not at all.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Remember that neutron transport theory he was obsessed with?
Yeah.
Turns out it's the backbone of understanding.
How to design and operate nuclear reactors safely.
Okay.
And that's exactly what he did at American Electric Power.
One of his big accomplishments there was that he cracked the code.
On boron-10 depletion in reactor coolant systems.
Boron-10 depletion. Okay, I need a bit more explanation on this one.
Okay, so think of boron-10 as a neutron sponge.
Okay.
It soaks up those neutrons, and it prevents the nuclear chain reaction from going haywire.
It's like having emergency brakes on a superpowered engine.
Yeah.
And the coolant system. That's the liquid that circulates through the reactor.
Keeping everything from melting down.
Right.
So Neymotin figured out how this neutron sponge breaks down over time.
In that coolant system.
Which is super important for making sure those brakes keep working.
Right.
And preventing a meltdown.
Whoa, okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
So he was basically a nuclear safety superhero.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And he didn't stop there.
He also developed a new way to verify something called the...
moderator temperature coefficient.
Okay.
Basically, this makes sure the reactor behaves predictably when things heat up.
Keeps everything stable and prevents any nasty surprises.
So this guy's contributions are way more than just theoretical.
He's actually making sure these power plants run safely.
Pretty crucial stuff. But wait, there's more, right?
Always more.
It wasn't all about boron and moderators, was it?
Oh, you bet.
He was also knee-deep in analyzing some incredibly complex...
Aspects of reactor operations?
Like what?
Things like reactivity depositions.
Okay.
Basically figuring out how different elements build up in the reactor.
And affect its performance.
And then there's pin power reconstruction.
Which is like mapping out the energy hotspots within individual fuel rods.
Wow.
To make sure they don't overheat.
Talk about multitasking.
It's like he's juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle.
Yeah.
But even with all this hands-on work...
He still found time to be a prolific writer.
He did.
We're talking 21 publications and 10 reports. This guy clearly never sleeps.
A rating machine.
Yeah. And the titles of some of these publications are pretty intriguing.
For example, there's one called The Influence of a Moving Medium on Neutron Distribution. Sounds like something straight out of Star Trek.
Right.
So what's that one all about?
Is he talking about warp drive or something?
Not quite warp drive, but it is about how the movement of materials...
Like that coolant we were talking about?
Okay.
Can actually mess with the way neutrons move around in a reactor?
It's super complex stuff, but basically he figured out how to predict...
How these little neutrons would act in a constantly moving environment.
So it's like trying to herd cats.
But the cats are microscopic particles zipping around at the speed of light.
You got it.
But that's not all.
Okay.
There's another paper with an even more intriguing title.
An approximate theory for neutrons slowing down and propagation in the field of gravity.
Wait, gravity.
What does gravity have to do with neutrons?
Right.
Was he studying neutrons on a roller coaster or something?
Not exactly.
But it turns out that even gravity,
okay,
as weak as it is,
can have a tiny but measurable effect on how neutrons move and interact.
This paper was all about figuring out the math behind those effects.
Okay, so we've got theoretical papers,
practical reactor work,
and even gravity thrown into the mix.
This is already more twists and turns than a pretzel factory.
I know, right?
But wait, there's a curveball coming up.
I'm looking at his time at Rockefeller University.
And it mentions research on malaria.
You're kidding?
What?
Talk about a head scratcher.
What does a nuclear physicist have to do with malaria?
Exactly. This is where it gets really interesting.
Let's dive into that malaria mystery.
In the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the career of Evsey Neymotin.
Remember where we left off?
Yeah, nuclear reactors, gravity-bending neutrons.
And now malaria.
I know, right?
It's like a scientific choose-your-own-adventure story.
It is. It's wild.
Seriously, it's like he took a sharp left turn from...
splitting atoms to fighting mosquitoes?
Yeah.
I'm dying to know how those two worlds connect.
Well, before we get to the mosquitoes...
Let's circle back to his work at American Electric Power.
Okay.
Remember how he was not just researching, but actually on the front lines?
Helping to keep those nuclear plants running smoothly.
Yeah, that really stood out to me.
Like, he wasn't just some ivory tower theorist.
He was getting his hands dirty, so to speak.
Exactly. He was the go-to guy for solving any tricky problems that popped up.
Think math reactor physics statistics.
He was like a one-man troubleshooting team.
Wow.
Helping out both the plant operators and the engineers.
So he was translating all that complex theory into
actual practical solutions.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
And one thing that caught my eye was
his work on developing and maintaining reactor core models for
that DC Cook power plant. What does that even involve?
Building tiny little reactors in a lab?
Not quite miniature reactors.
Close.
Okay.
He was creating sophisticated computer simulations of the reactor core.
Using special codes like Casmo Simulate and a PDQ.
Okay.
It's like building a virtual reactor inside a computer.
These models help predict how the reactor will behave under different conditions.
Super important for optimizing performance and, of course, making sure everything stays safe.
Okay, so not only was he a theoretical whiz...
He was also a coding ninja. Talk about a multi-talented guy.
It really shows how he combined
the power of theoretical physics with
practical real-world tools.
Exactly. He was fluent in both the language of equations
and the language of computer code.
Yeah.
But let's zoom in on a couple of those key contributions.
We touched on earlier.
Okay.
Remember that boron 10 depletion thing? Yeah. Let's break down why that's so crucial for controlling those nuclear reactions.
Yeah, it sounded important, but I'm still a little fuzzy on the details.
It's like trying to understand rocket science after a long night out.
Okay, so picture this.
You've got this incredibly powerful nuclear chain reaction happening inside the reactor.
Okay.
That's what's generating all that energy.
Right.
But you don't want it to run wild, right?
No.
So you need a way to control it.
To kind of put the brakes on when things get too hot.
Okay, so that's where boron 10 comes in.
Bingo. It's a neutron absorber.
Think of it as a neutron sponge.
Okay.
Soaking up those extra neutrons.
And slowing down the chain reaction?
It's like the emergency brake on a superpowered engine.
Okay.
And the coolant system. That's the liquid that circulates through the reactor.
Carrying the boron 10 with it.
So it's like a braking system for the reactor.
Delivered via liquid.
Exactly. But here's the catch.
The boron 10 breaks down over time.
As it hangs out in that coolant system.
Oh.
Neymotin's research was all about figuring out
how that breakdown happens.
and how it affects the reactor's ability to control the chain reaction.
It's essential for making sure those brakes keep working properly.
And that's why his paper on this topic ended up in
Nuclear Science and Engineering, right?
Yeah.
That top-tier journal.
You got it.
Yeah.
It was groundbreaking research that had a real impact on the nuclear industry.
Wow.
Not bad for a guy who started out studying abstract theoretical physics.
Wait, remember that other contribution we mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
The moderator temperature coefficient, or MTC?
Yeah.
Let's unpack that one, too.
Yeah, that one sounded pretty technical.
I'm all ears.
Okay.
Or I guess all brainwaves.
So the MTC is all about how the reactor responds to changes in temperature.
Okay.
You see the moderator, which is usually water in these reactors,
Helps slow down the neutron.
making the chain reaction more efficient.
But as the moderator heats up,
Things can get a bit unpredictable.
unpredictable.
Like those neutrons start doing the cha-cha instead of behaving properly.
Well, not exactly dancing.
But the chain reaction can speed up or slow down in unexpected ways.
Don't know.
What you want is a negative MTC.
Okay.
That means when the moderator temperature goes up,
The reactivity or the intensity of the chain reaction goes down.
it's like a self-regulating system.
A bit like a thermostat.
Ah, okay, so it keeps things
You
from...
get too hot and going out of control.
Yep.
So what did Neymotin do with this MTC?
He developed a new way to verify that the MTC was behaving properly.
That it was staying negative and doing its job of keeping the reactor stable?
It was a more accurate and reliable method than what was being used before,
So again, it was about taking this complex concept
and making it useful in the real world.
ensuring the safety of those nuclear power plants.
Right.
Pretty important stuff. But it wasn't just about boron and MTCs, right?
Right.
He was also digging into these things called...
Reactivity depositions.
Yes.
What are those all about?
The mysteries of reactivity depositions.
Remember how we talked about boron-10 being a neutron absorber? Well, it turns out that other elements...
Particularly xenon and samarium
Okay,
can also act like neutron sponges.
but here's the thing.
What's that?
They're not intentionally added like boron-10.
They're actually byproducts of the fission process itself,
So they're like uninvited guests at the neutron party.
crashing the party and messing things up.
Exactly.
As these elements build up in the reactor core,
They start soaking up neutrons.
affecting the power distribution and the overall reactivity,
It's like having these little gremlins popping up.
and throwing wrenches into the works.
So what did Neymotin do about these neutron gremlins?
He developed methods to analyze and predict how these fission products would build up.
And what impact they would have on the reactor's performance?
It's like creating a forecast for those uninvited guests
Figuring out when they're going to show up.
and how much trouble they might cause.
So he was basically the neutron weatherman.
Predicting those fission product storms.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. It's fascinating how all these seemingly disparate pieces...
Of his research, boron MTCs, reactivity depositions, all tie back to.
This central theme of controlling and understanding those nuclear reactions.
You're spot on. It speaks to the depth and breadth of his expertise.
He wasn't just focused on one narrow aspect of nuclear engineering.
He had this incredible grasp of the entire field.
And how all those pieces fit together.
It's like he was a master chef in the nuclear kitchen
Knowing exactly which ingredients to add and when.
to keep that reactor recipe perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. We haven't even touched on his work.
On analyzing rod position indication.
And pin power reconstruction.
Right.
Those sound pretty complex.
They are. But they're also essential for keeping those reactors.
Running smoothly and safely.
Let's break those down next.
It's like taking a peek behind the curtain of a nuclear power plant.
And seeing how all the magic happens.
Welcome back to our deep dives into the world of Evsey Neymotin.
Last time we were about to pull back the curtain.
On some of the more technical aspects of his work, rod position indication and pin power reconstruction.
These might sound like something out of a sci-fi movie.
But they're crucial for keeping those nuclear reactors humming along.
Safely and efficiently.
Okay, I'm ready for my crash course in nuclear engineering.
Let's start with rod position indication.
What's that all about?
Imagine you're driving a car.
Okay.
You need to know where the gas pedal and the brakes are.
To control the speed, right?
Right.
Well, in a nuclear reactor, the control rods are kind of like the brakes.
They're made of materials that absorb neutrons.
So by moving them in and out of the reactor core,
You can control the rate of the nuclear chain reaction.
so it's like fine-tuning the power output of the reactor,
Exactly.
making sure it doesn't, go into overdrive.
And rod position indication is all about.
Knowing the precise location of those control rods at all times
It's essential for making sure the reactor is operating
at the desired power level.
and that everything stays safe and stable.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, what about pin power reconstruction?
That one sounds even more cryptic.
Think of the reactor core as a giant bundle of pencils,
Okay.
and each pencil is a fuel rod packed with nuclear fuel.
Pin power reconstruction is like taking a 3D X-ray of those pencils.
To see how much power is being generated in each one.
So it's like finding the hot spots in the reactor core.
You got it.
Making sure no single pencil gets too hot and starts a fire.
By understanding the power distribution,
With each fuel rod,
you can optimize fuel usage.
and prevent any overheating or damage to the reactor core.
It's like making sure all the pencils are getting sharpened evenly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
It's like a giant, intricate puzzle.
And Evsey Neymotin was a master at solving it.
He really was.
But remember, this guy wasn't just a hands-on engineer.
He was also a prolific writer,
He was.
publishing all sorts of fascinating papers.
Let's dive into some of those, shall we?
Absolutely. His publications give us even more insight.
Into his incredible range of expertise. Remember that paper we mentioned earlier?
The influence of a moving medium on neutron distribution.
Yeah, that one really kicked my curiosity.
It sounds like something straight out of a physics textbook.
Well, it is about some pretty complex physics.
But here's the gist. Remember how we talked about the coolant circulating through the reactor?
Yeah.
Well, that coolant is constantly moving.
And it turns out that movement can actually affect the way...
Neutrons travel within the reactor core.
So it's like trying to hit a moving target with a neutron beam.
Exactly.
It adds another layer of complexity to the whole equation.
And that's where Neymotin's brilliance comes in.
He was able to develop mathematical models to predict
How these moving fluids would influence the behavior of...
those tiny, speedy neutrons,
So he was basically a neutron whisperer
figuring out the secrets of their movement.
in this constantly shifting environment.
It's pretty remarkable.
Pretty amazing.
And then there's that other paper, the one about gravity and neutrons.
Oh, right.
I'm still scratching my head over that one.
An approximate theory for neutrons slowing down and propagation in the field of gravity.
It might seem strange to think about gravity affecting these tiny particles.
But even the weakest of forces can have an impact at the subatomic level.
So it's like those neutrons are doing a cosmic ballet.
Influenced by the gravitational pull of everything around them.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And this paper delved into the theoretical framework for understanding.
Those subtle gravitational effects on neutron behavior.
It turns out this knowledge is relevant not just for
Designing nuclear reactors here on Earth.
but also for understanding astrophysical phenomena like neutron stars.
Wow, so his work had implications that extended far beyond our planet.
That's incredible. And speaking of incredible,
We can't forget that he published in some pretty prestigious journals,
he did,
including Nuclear Science and Engineering.
which I hear is like the holy grail for nuclear engineers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Getting published in a top-tier journal like that is a huge accomplishment.
It's like winning an Oscar for scientific research. It speaks volumes about the quality and significance of his work.
So taking a step back and looking at Evsey Neymotin's entire career,
What are some of the key takeaways?
what makes his story so remarkable?
Well, first and foremost, he was a brilliant physicist,
With a deep understanding of theoretical concepts.
particularly in neutron transport theory,
But what sets him apart is his ability to bridge the gap.
between abstract theory and practical applications.
Yeah.
He was able to translate his knowledge into real-world solutions.
Making significant contributions to the nuclear power industry.
And on top of that, he was a gifted communicator.
Sharing his insights through numerous publications and reports.
It's like he was fluent in both the language of science.
And the language of engineering.
Right.
A true Renaissance man of the nuclear age.
It really makes you wonder what other fields could have benefited from his expertise.
That's a great point.
Could he have applied his mathematical modeling skills to things like...
Climate change or financial forecasting?
That's a great question. Given his ability to jump between disciplines...
From nuclear reactors to malaria research?
Right.
It's certainly possible that his skills could have been valuable.
In a wide range of fields.
He had a knack for finding connections between seemingly unrelated areas.
Which is often where the most innovative breakthroughs occur.
It's like he had this unique ability to see,
The forest and the trees.
to grasp both the big picture and the intricate details.
Yeah.
Truly an inspiring figure.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we've all learned a lot today.
About a remarkable individual.
Evsey Neymotin's story is a testament to the power of
Curiosity, intellectual rigor, and the willingness to embrace new challenges
absolutely. His journey reminds us that the boundaries between scientific disciplines
are often more fluid than we think.
and that the most groundbreaking discoveries often arise.
From connecting those seemingly disparate fields.
Who knows what amazing innovations await us at those intersections?
That's a great thought to leave our listeners with.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Evsey Neymotin.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep those brainwaves firing.